The morning of my daughter's wedding, I stood in the barn checking on the horses, trying to shake the uneasiness that had been building for months. Through the open doors, I could see the white tent they'd set up in the north pasture, the chairs arranged in perfect rows, the archway decorated with roses from my late wife's garden. Everything looked perfect. So why did I feel like something was terribly wrong? It started 8 months earlier, when Megan brought Trevor home for the first time. We were having dinner, just the three of us, and he seemed genuinely interested in the ranch. Not in that polite, making conversation way that city boys usually showed when they visited. He asked specific questions about acreage, water rights, grazing permits. I figured he was trying to impress me, showed that he could relate to my world, even though he worked in commercial real estate in Denver. How many acres exactly? He'd asked, cutting into his steak. Just under 3,000, I said. Been in my family for 4 generations. His eyes lit up in a way that seemed odd at the time, but I brushed it off. That's incredible. Must be worth a fortune now with all the development coming this way, I suppose, but it's not for sale. Of course not, he said quickly. Family legacy, I get it. Megan smiled at him across the table. That soft, admiring look she'd developed since they'd started dating. My daughter had always been level-headed, practical like her mother, but around Trevor she seemed different, quieter, more eager to please. After dinner, Trevor offered to help me with the evening feed. As we walked to the barn, he kept asking questions. Did I own the mineral rights? Had I ever been approached by developers? What about conservation easements? You sure know a lot about land ownership for a city boy, I said, trying to keep my tone light. He laughed. Occupational hazard. I see so many families sitting on gold mines without realizing it. Not that I'm suggesting anything, he added quickly. Just find it fascinating. That night, after they'd gone to bed in the guest room, I sat in my study looking at old photos. My wife Emma would have known what to make of Trevor immediately. She had a sense about people that I'd always trusted. Been 3 years since the cancer took her, and I still found myself wanting to ask her opinion on everything. Over the next few months, Trevor became a regular fixture at the ranch. He'd drive out from Denver most weekends. Always helpful, always charming. He fixed the gate that had been sagging for years, helped me rebuild a section of fence, even mucked stalls without being asked. The perfect future son-in-law, everyone said. My neighbors were impressed. My brother Keith thought I'd hit the lottery, but the questions never stopped. Casual comments about property taxes, about how hard it must be to maintain such a large place alone, about whether I'd thought about my retirement plans. He'd pull up articles on his phone about ranchers who'd sold to developers and retired millionaires. Just interesting to see what others are doing, he'd say. Then came the engagement. He proposed to Megan at Christmas, right here on the ranch, in front of the whole family. Got down on one knee by the fireplace with a ring that must have cost 3 months of his salary. Megan said yes immediately, tears streaming down her face. Everyone applauded. I smiled and shook his hand, told him welcome to the family. But that uneasiness was already there, like a stone in my boot. The wedding planning consumed the next 6 months. They decided to have it at the ranch. Of course, it's so beautiful, Dad, Megan said, and it means so much to have it at home. Trevor was enthusiastic about the idea, maybe too enthusiastic. He took charge of coordinating with vendors, scouting locations for the ceremony, managing details I'd expect the bride to handle. One afternoon in March, I came back from town to find Trevor in my study. He was standing by the filing cabinet, not touching anything, just looking for something. I asked. He didn't startle, didn't look guilty, just smiled. Megan asked me to find the insurance papers for the wedding policy. Those would be in the kitchen drawer, always have been. Oh, she said, to check here. Must have misunderstood. But Megan was at work in Denver that day. I know because I'd talked to her an hour earlier. Little things kept adding up. I'd find Trevor on parts of the property where he had no reason to be. The back 40, where we kept the old equipment. The ridgeline that marked our boundary with the national forest. Once, I caught him taking photos of the house and outbuildings. Lots of them, from every angle. For the wedding photographer, he explained. Want to show them the best spots. In May, 2 months before the wedding, something happened that should have made me act. I was in town at the hardware store when Jim Patterson mentioned seeing Trevor at the county courthouse. He was in the records room, Jim said, pulling property files. Figured you knew. Must have been wedding stuff, I said, but my mouth went dry. That night, I asked Trevor about it directly. We were sitting on the porch, beers in hand, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. Jim Patterson says he saw you at the courthouse. Trevor didn't miss a beat. Yeah, needed copies of some permits for the wedding. They're really strict about large gatherings now. It was a reasonable answer, completely logical, but I knew he was lying. You don't ranch for 30 years without learning to spot bullshit. And Trevor was shoveling it hard. I should have confronted him harder, should have told Megan my concerns, but she was so happy. For the first time since her mother died, she was genuinely glowing with joy. How could I be the one to destroy that based on nothing more than feelings and coincidences? So I started paying closer attention. I noticed Trevor often steered conversations toward the ranch's future. What happens to this place when you're gone? He'd ask. Megan's not really equipped to run it alone. Or have you thought about setting up a trust, making sure everything's protected? He brought paperwork once, just some standard estate planning documents he'd had a lawyer friend draw up. No pressure, he said. Just thought it might be helpful to have everything organized. I took the papers but never signed them. When I had my own lawyer look at them, he frowned. This would give your daughter's husband significant control over the property in the event of your incapacitation, he said. Is that what you want? No. It WASN single quotes T. June arrived with a heat wave. The wedding planning intensified. Megan was stressed, working long hours at her job while trying to coordinate everything. Trevor seemed to handle it all with ease, making decisions, writing checks, managing the chaos. He'd quit his job, he mentioned casually, to focus on new opportunities. What opportunities? I asked. Just some development projects. Nothing concrete yet. The week before the wedding, relatives started arriving. My brother Keith and his family, Emma's sister from California, cousins I hadn't seen in years. The house was full of laughter and chaos. Megan seemed happy but distracted, spending a lot of time on her phone, stepping outside for private calls. Pre-wedding jitters, Trevor explained, his hand on her shoulder. Totally normal. But the way she flinched slightly at his touch wasn't normal. The way she looked at him when she thought no one was watching wasn't the look of a bride excited about her wedding. 3 days before the wedding, I was up late, unable to sleep. I went to the kitchen for water and heard voices from the guest room. Trevor and Megan were arguing, their voices low but intense. It's not right, I heard Megan say. We should wait. We've discussed this. Trevor's voice was different than I'd ever heard it. Harder. Everything's already in motion. But my father, your father, won't be around forever. Meg, we need to think about our future. Our future, or your future. There was a long silence, then Trevor's voice, softer now, manipulative. Baby, you know everything I do is for us. Don't you trust me? I stood in the dark hallway, my hands clenched into fists. Every instinct told me to burst through that door, to demand answers. But I heard Megan crying softly, and Trevor comforting her, and I retreated to my room like a coward. The next morning, Megan looked exhausted. I pulled her aside while Trevor was in the shower. Honey, is everything okay? Of course, Dad. Why wouldn't it be? You seem stressed. It's just wedding stuff. You know how it is. Megan, if there's something wrong, if you're having second thoughts, Dad, please. She cut me off, her eyes darting toward the hallway. Everything's fine. I love Trevor. We're getting married tomorrow. Can you just trust me? The way she said trust me felt loaded, like she was trying to tell me something else entirely. But before I could press further, Trevor appeared, all smiles and easy charm. Morning, Robert. Big day tomorrow. You ready to give away your little girl? The rehearsal that evening was perfect. Everyone played their parts flawlessly. The minister, an old family friend, walked us through the ceremony. Trevor was attentive and loving toward Megan, who smiled in all the right places. The dinner afterward was lively, full of toasts and laughter. Trevor's family had arrived that morning. His parents seemed nice enough, though they kept making comments about the potential of the ranch that set my teeth on edge. Trevor's best man, a slick-looking guy named Brad, who also worked in real estate, pulled me aside during dessert. Beautiful property you have here, Robert. Trevor tells me you're thinking about developing it. Trevor's mistaken. I'm not developing anything. Brad looked confused. Oh, I must have misunderstood. He seemed pretty certain. Well, anyway, great place. That night, I couldn't sleep at all. I went through Emma's old jewelry box, found the pearl necklace she'd worn at our wedding that Megan would wear tomorrow. Emma, what would you do? How would you handle this? But the dead don't answer, no matter how hard we wish they would. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and hot. The house was chaos from dawn. Hair and makeup people, photographers, relatives everywhere. Megan was sequestered in her childhood bedroom with her bridesmaids. I knocked once, wanting to see her, but her maid of honor said she wasn't ready yet. I put on my suit, the same one I'd worn to Emma's funeral, though no one else would remember that. Looked at myself in the mirror and saw an old rancher playing dress-up, gray hair that needed cutting, hands too rough for the fine fabric. An hour before the ceremony, I went to check on Megan again. This time, she let me in. She was stunning in her dress, Emma's pearls around her neck, but her eyes were red, carefully concealed with makeup but still visible to a father who knew his daughter's face better than his own. You look beautiful, sweetheart. Thanks, Dad. She hugged me carefully, mindful of her dress and makeup. During the embrace, I felt her slip something into my jacket pocket. When I started to look, she grabbed my hand. Not now, she whispered urgently. Please, not until. Just wait. Megan, Dad, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Just trust me and be ready. Before I could answer, the photographer bustled in, wanting photos of the bride with her father. We posed and smiled, playing our parts while my pocket felt like it held a live coal. The ceremony was scheduled for 4 o'clock. Guests were arriving, taking their seats in the decorated chairs facing the mountains. Trevor was already at the altar with his groomsmen, looking confident and handsome in his tuxedo. I stood with Megan in the house, waiting for our cue. Whatever happens, she said quietly, know that I love you, and I'm sorry. Megan, what? The music started. Our cue. She took my arm, her grip tighter than necessary, and we walked out of the house toward the tent. Everyone stood, phones out, capturing the moment. My brother Keith grinned at me. Trevor's parents beamed, and Trevor himself watched us approach with an expression I couldn't quite read. We walked slowly down the aisle, Megan's hand trembling on my arm. When we reached the altar, the minister asked who gave this woman to be married. I said the traditional words, kissed Megan's cheek, and turned to take my seat in the front row. That's when Megan grabbed my hand again, holding me in place. Wait, Dad, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Then, as she turned toward Trevor, she pulled something from her bouquet, a folded piece of paper, and pressed it into my palm. I looked down at it, my hands shaking slightly as I unfolded it. In Megan's handwriting, shaky and urgent, Dad, help me. He's not who he says he is. Time seemed to stop. I looked up at my daughter, who was staring at me with desperate eyes, then at Trevor, whose expression had shifted from confusion to something harder. The minister looked bewildered. The guests were murmuring. I stood up straighter, the note crumpling in my fist. I think we need to stop. Robert, Trevor said, his voice carrying a warning. This is just nerves. Megan, tell him. But Megan stepped back, moving closer to me. No, I can't do this. What's happening? The minister asked. Trevor's mask slipped completely then. The charm disappeared, replaced by cold fury. Megan, we discussed this. You know what's at stake. What's at stake? I demanded, stepping between them. Trevor's jaw clenched. Your daughter and I have plans, Robert, important plans that don't concern you. Any plans involving my daughter concern me. The guests were in full confusion now, some standing, others whispering frantically. Trevor's best man Brad stepped forward like he might intervene physically, but Keith moved to block him. Tell them, Megan said to Trevor, her voice stronger now. Tell them about the investors. Tell them about the forged documents. Tell them what you really want. Trevor's parents were on their feet now, his mother calling out, Trevor, what is she talking about? The silence that followed Megan's words was deafening. Trevor stood there, his face cycling through emotions, anger, calculation, desperation before settling on a cold smile that made my blood run cold. You're being dramatic. Darling, he said, reaching for Megan's hand. She jerked away. Don't touch me. Her voice carried across the crowd. I'm done pretending. Someone want to tell me what the hell is going on? Keith demanded, moving closer to the altar. I held up the crumpled note. My daughter just asked for help. That's all I need to know. I turned to the guests. I'm sorry, folks, but there's not going to be a wedding today. Trevor's mother gasped. His father stood up, face reddening. This is ridiculous. Trevor, get control of your bride. She's not my bride, Trevor snapped, his composure finally cracking. And apparently she never intended to be. That's not true, Megan said, her voice shaking but determined. I loved you, or I thought I did, until I found out what you really wanted. Which was? I asked, though I was starting to piece it together. Megan looked at me with tears streaming down her face, makeup running. The ranch, Dad. It was always about the ranch. He has investors lined up, a whole development deal ready to go. He just needed to marry me to get access to it. The crowd erupted in shocked murmurs. Trevor's face went dark. That's a lie, he said flatly. I love Megan. The ranch has nothing to do with stop. Megan pulled out her phone. I have recordings. Trevor, conversations with Brad about the development plans, the forged power of attorney documents you tried to get Dad to sign. The calls with your investors about how you'd have control of the property within a year of our marriage. I thought about all those questions, all those visits to the courthouse, the way he'd photographed every inch of the property. My hands clenched into fists. You son of a bitch. Now hold on. Brad stepped forward, his real estate shark instincts kicking in. There's nothing illegal about development plans. Trevor was thinking about the future. About maximizing the value of shut up, Brad, Trevor snarled. Maximizing the value. I turned on Brad. This land has been in my family for 4 generations. It's not some investment opportunity. Everything's an investment opportunity, Brad said with a shrug that made me want to deck him. Trevor saw potential where you just see dirt and cows. That dirt and cows, Keith said, stepping up beside me, is our heritage. You pompous ass. The minister cleared his throat. Perhaps we should all calm down and no, Megan interrupted. I need to say this, all of it. She turned to face the crowd, many of whom had their phones out, recording. Trevor came to my company's office 8 months ago. He said he was there for a real estate consultation, but he sought me out specifically. He knew who I was, knew about the ranch, knew Dad was a widower. He pursued me deliberately. That's insane, Trevor protested. We met at a coffee shop. After you followed me there for 3 weeks straight, Megan shot back. I found your notes, Trevor, your whole file on our family, financial records, property assessments, even Mum's obituary with notes about Dad being vulnerable and lonely. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Emma's death, my grief, used as research for a con. When did you find out? I asked Megan. 3 weeks ago. I was looking for a pen in his desk and found the file. Everything was there. The investor's contracts with his name on them as future property owner. The development plans that would turn our home into 300 luxury houses. Even a timeline for how quickly after the wedding he could start the process. Why didn't you tell me? My voice cracked. Because he threatened me, Megan said quietly. The crowd went silent. Not physically. Trevor's too smart for that. But he said he'd destroy you financially if I didn't go through with it. Said he had enough information about the ranch's debts and back taxes to force a sale anyway. Said marrying him was the only way to keep you from losing everything. That's enough, Trevor said sharply. Megan, you're confused. You're having a breakdown. The only breakdown I'm having is finally breaking free from your manipulation. She turned to his parents. I'm sorry. I don't think you knew what your son was planning, but you should know who he really is. Trevor's mother was crying now, his father's face purple with rage, though at whom, I couldn't tell. Is this true? His father demanded. This whole thing was about property development. Trevor straightened his tie, that cold smile returning. I'm a businessman, Dad. I see opportunities. The ranch is worth $40 million developed. Sitting as is, it's just a drain on resources. It's our home. I roared, starting toward him. Keith and 2 other relatives grabbed me, holding me back. Not for much longer, Trevor said coldly. You think this ends here? I've done my research. Robert, You're 3 months behind on property taxes. You took out a second mortgage to pay for Emma's cancer treatment. You're one bad season away from bankruptcy. The truth of it hit me like ice water. He was right about the finances. The ranch was struggling, had been since Emma's medical bills piled up. So what? Keith said. We'll figure it out as a family. We always have. With what money? Brad interjected, clearly not reading the room. Trevor's offer was generous. More than generous. You people are sitting on a goldmine and too stubborn to see it. You people, my sister-in-law, Margaret stood up. This is a family legacy, not a real estate deal. Everything's a deal, Trevor said. He looked at Megan with something like contempt. I offered you everything. A life of luxury, travel, never having to worry about money again. Mean you choose this? He gestured at the ranch. A failing cattle operation and a stubborn old man who can't accept that times have changed. That's when I hit him, not my proudest moment. But seeing him look at my daughter with such disdain, hearing him dismiss our entire life as worthless, my fist connected with his jaw before anyone could stop me. Trevor went down hard. Blood spurted from his nose onto his white tuxedo shirt. "Dad!" Megan cried, but she wasn't angry. If anything, she looked relieved. Brad helped Trevor to his feet, pulling out a handkerchief for the blood. You just assaulted my client, in front of dozens of witnesses. I hope the ranch is worth the lawsuit. Sue me, I said. Get in line behind the medical bills in the tax office. Trevor spat blood onto the ground. You're done, old man. All of you. I'll buy this place at auction within the year. No, a voice said from the crowd. You won't. We all turned. Jim Patterson stood up, along with 5 other local ranchers. We've been talking, Jim said. If Robert needs help keeping the ranch, he'll get it. We don't let outsiders destroy our community. Neither do we, said another voice. My neighbor Ellen stood with her husband. The Cattlemen's Association has emergency funds for situations like this. You're not getting this land, Mr. Hayes. More people stood. Relatives, neighbors, friends, people from town I'd known for decades. Even some people I didn't recognize. Guests from Trevor's side who looked disgusted by what they'd heard. This is ridiculous, Trevor's father said. Trevor, we're leaving now. I'm not finished, Trevor said, wiping blood from his face. Yes, you are, his father said firmly. I didn't raise you to be this. Your mother and I are ashamed. He turned to me. I'm deeply sorry for my son's behavior. There's no excuse for it. Trevor looked at his parents in shock. You're taking their side. There are no sides here, son. There's just right and wrong. And you're wrong. Trevor's mother was sobbing now, mascara running down her cheeks. How could you? Using marriage as a business tactic, threatening this poor girl. Poor girl. Trevor laughed bitterly. She was going to benefit too. Millions of dollars, and she throws it away for what? Sentiment. For family, Megan said firmly. For home. For things you could never understand, because all you see is dollar signs. You'll regret this, Trevor said, looking around at everyone. All of you. When this place is bankrupt and sold off piece by piece, remember, you could have had $40 million. We'll manage, I said. We always have. Without you. Brad whispered urgently in Trevor's ear, probably about lawsuits and assault charges. Trevor shook him off, straightening his blood-stained tux. This isn't over, he said, looking directly at me. Yes, it is, Megan said. She pulled off her engagement ring, a massive diamond that must have cost a fortune or maybe was purchased with the investor's money, and threw it at his feet. We're done. If you come near me or my family again, I'll release all the recordings. Every conversation, every threat, every lie. Trevor picked up the ring, his hand shaking with rage. For a moment, I thought he might do something stupid, but Brad grabbed his arm. We're leaving, Brad said. Now they walked through the crowd, which parted like the Red Sea. No one said a word until Trevor's car disappeared down the drive, dust cloud trailing behind it. Then the silence broke. People rushed to Megan, hugging her, offering support. The minister patted my shoulder. That was the right thing to do. Robert, what's it? I looked at the decorated altar, the flowers, the chairs. All the money spent on a wedding that didn't happen is cost a fortune we don't have. Dad, Megan said, taking my hands. I'll pay it back. Every penny. I'm so sorry I let it get this far. Why did you, honey? Why not just tell me when you found out? She started crying again. Because part of what he said was true. We are in financial trouble. And I thought maybe if I went through with it, I could control him somehow. Keep him from destroying everything. I was stupid. You were brave, Margaret said, hugging her. It takes courage to stand up in front of everyone and tell the truth. What do we do now? Someone asked. I looked around at all these people, dressed up with nowhere to celebrate. The catering was ready. The band was set up. Everything paid for and waiting. Well, I said slowly, seems a shame to waste all this food and music. Keith grinned. You're suggesting we have a party anyway. Why not? Call it a celebration of Megan's freedom, or a family reunion, or just a good old-fashioned ranch party. People started laughing, the tension finally breaking. The band leader approached. So, we playing or not? Play, I said. Play everything. Happy songs only. And that's what we did. We had a party. People kicked off their formal shoes and danced in the grass. The caterers served the wedding feast, which became a community meal. Megan changed out of her wedding dress into jeans and one of her mother's old sundresses. She looked more beautiful than she had all day. As the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky purple and gold, I stood with my daughter, watching our friends and family celebrate. I'm sorry, Dad, she said quietly. About the money problems, about keeping secrets, about everything. Nothing to apologize for. You were trying to protect me. He was right about one thing. The ranch is in trouble. I nodded. Has been for a while. But we'll figure something out. How? Before I could answer, Jim Patterson approached with a beer and an envelope. Robert, Megan, we took up a collection. It's not much, but it'll help with the immediate tax problem. I opened the envelope and nearly dropped it. There was a check for $30,000. Jim, I can't. You can and you will. It's not charity. It's neighbors helping neighbors. Besides, he grinned, we can't let some city developer get his hands on this place. Where else would we hold the annual barbecue? More people approached throughout the evening, offering help. Some with money, others with labor, connections, ideas. The local bank president mentioned restructuring loans. A lawyer offered pro bono help if Trevor tried to sue. By the end of the night, we had a plan to save the ranch. Megan stood before everyone as the party wound down, still in her jeans and sundress, and made a speech. I want to thank you all for being here today. Not for the wedding that wasn't, but for showing me and my father what really matters. Trevor was wrong about us being too stubborn to change. We're not stubborn, we're strong, we're committed. We're family, all of us, blood or not. And we don't give up on each other. The crowd cheered. Someone started singing an old song Emma used to love, and soon everyone joined in. I stood there, listening to voices raised together, watching my daughter laugh for the first time in weeks, and thought about how sometimes the worst days become the best ones. 3 months later, the ranch was stable. Not thriving, but surviving. Megan had moved back home, taking a remote job to help with expenses. We started boarding horses and offering riding lessons. Margaret started a farm-to-table program with her restaurant connections. The community rallied in ways I never expected. Trevor tried to make good on his threats initially. He sent lawyers, filed complaints, attempted to buy our debt from the bank. But the recordings Megan had were damning, especially the ones where he discussed forging documents. His investors pulled out when the story hit the local news. Last I heard, he was under investigation for fraud in another state. Megan struggled, for a while with trust, with believing she could have been so wrong about someone. She started seeing a therapist, working through the manipulation and emotional abuse she'd endured. Slowly, she began to heal. I should have seen it, she said one evening as we sat on the porch, watching the sunset. All the red flags were there. Love makes us blind sometimes, I said. Your mother used to say that's both its blessing and its curse. Mom would have seen through him immediately. Maybe, or maybe she would have trusted your judgment and supported you, like I should have done sooner. You did support me, Dad. When it mattered most, you stood up for me. After you, he had to literally hand me a note begging for help. She laughed. Well, I needed it to be dramatic enough that you couldn't ignore it. Mission accomplished. We sat in comfortable silence, listening to the cattle and the wind through the grass. The ranch spread out before us, not a gold mine or an investment, opportunity, but home, our home. Protected now by more than just determination, protected by community, by family, by the bonds that Trevor never understood and could never break. A year later, Megan met someone new, a veterinarian who came to check on our horses and stayed for dinner. He was nothing like Trevor, quiet, genuine, more interested in animal welfare than property values. When he learned about the ranch's history, he didn't see dollar signs. He saw stories, tradition, something worth preserving. Don't rush, I told Megan when she mentioned they were getting serious. Take your time. I will, she promised. But Dad, this one knows the ranch isn't for sale. Good, because it never will be. The ranch is still here, still in our family, still struggling sometimes but surviving. Trevor was wrong about many things, but mostly this. He thought the land's value was in what it could become, not what it already was. He saw 3,000 acres of potential profit. We see 4 generations of memories, work, love, and loss. We see home. Sometimes I think about that morning in the barn before the wedding, how uneasy I felt without knowing why. Maybe it was intuition. Maybe it was Emma watching over us. Or maybe it was just a father's instinct, knowing his daughter needed protection, even when she couldn't ask for it. Whatever it was, I'm grateful. Grateful I stood up when Megan needed me. Grateful for a community that rallied around us. Grateful for the disaster that wasn't a disaster at all, but a rescue. The wedding that didn't happen saved us all. 5 years have passed since that almost wedding, and I'm writing this all down now because Megan asked me to. She's getting married next month, for real this time, to Sam, the veterinarian who captured her heart by treating our animals with more tenderness than Trevor ever showed to people. She wants to read this story at their rehearsal dinner. She says, as a reminder of how wrong turns can lead to right destinations. The ranch looks different now, not in the way Trevor envisioned with his luxury developments, but in smaller, meaningful ways. We've added a stable for the boarding business. That's become our main income. There's a vegetable garden where Emma's flower garden used to be. Megan said her mother would approve of the practicality. The old barn has been reinforced and painted, thanks to a community workday that brought 50 people together last summer. Trevor's threats of lawsuits came to nothing. Turns out his investors were being investigated for money laundering, and Trevor himself got caught up in the federal case. He needed his resources for his own defense, not for pursuing us. Last I heard from his father, who still sends a Christmas card each year with an apology. Trevor was working as a junior associate at a small firm in Florida. His dreams of easy millions crushed under the weight of legal fees and a ruined reputation. Brad, his best man and co-conspirator, lost his real estate license after Megan submitted her recordings to the state board. He'd been involved in 3 other similar schemes, it turned out. Families who'd lost their homes to his manipulations came forward after our story made the news. He's serving 2 years in minimum security for fraud, but this isn't about them anymore. It's about what we built from the ashes of that disaster. Megan threw herself into saving the ranch with the same intensity she'd once reserved for her art. She started a blog about ranch life that somehow caught fire online. City people, hungry for authenticity, followed our daily struggles and triumphs. The blog led to a book deal, The Almost Bride, How a Failed Wedding Saved My Family's Ranch. The advance paid off the back taxes, and then some. She also started teaching riding lessons to kids from Denver whose parents wanted them to experience real ranch life. One of those kids, a shy boy named Marcus who reminded me of Daniel from years ago, told her he wanted to be a rancher when he grew up. Not a developer, he said seriously. A real rancher who takes care of the land. Megan cried after that lesson. The community support never wavered. Jim Patterson's son took over their ranch and partnered with us on a grass-fed beef operation that's actually profitable. Ellen and her husband helped us get certified organic, opening up new markets we'd never considered. The Cattlemen's Association featured our story in their national magazine, and donations came in from ranchers all over the country who'd faced similar threats from developers. My brother Keith moved back from Dallas, leaving his corporate job to help run things. "I'm too old to keep pretending I care about spreadsheets more than cattle," he said. His wife wasn't thrilled about leaving the city, but she's adapted. He started a pottery studio in the old milk house, selling pieces to tourists who'd come through. Oh, yes, tourists. That was Megan's idea too. Ranch tours, overnight camping experiences, cowboy for a day programs. Nothing too commercial, nothing that changes the essential character of the place, but enough to bring in steady income. People pay good money to experience what we've always taken for granted: sunrise over the mountains, the sound of cattle lowing, the satisfaction of a day's physical work. Sam fits into all of this, like he was born to it. Unlike Trevor, who saw the ranch as something to be conquered and monetized, Sam sees it as something to be cared for and preserved. He started a program providing free veterinary care to the animals of elderly ranchers who can't afford it. Community takes care of community, he says, sounding more like my father every day. Their wedding will be small, 40 people instead of 300. The ceremony will be by Emma's garden at sunset. Reception in the barn we've cleaned and decorated with simple wildflowers. No grand gestures, no society photographers, no stress about impressing anyone. Just family, real friends, and a celebration of love that's been tested and proven true. I asked Sam once if Megan had told him about Trevor before they got serious. "First date," he said. She laid it all out, the manipulation, the threats, the whole disaster. Said if I had any agenda beyond getting to know her, I should leave immediately. And I told her the only agenda I had was making sure she never had to hand another note to anyone asking for help. That if she needed help, she could just ask, and if she couldn't ask, I'd offer anyway. That's when I knew he was the one. The note itself, that little piece of paper that changed everything, sits framed in my study. "Dad, help me." Such simple words that took such courage to write and deliver. Megan laughs when people ask about it, saying it's weird to frame a cry for help, but I don't care. It reminds me that sometimes the hardest thing to do is ask for what we need, and that being there when someone asks is the greatest privilege a father can have. We added something else to that frame, a photo from the non-wedding reception. After Trevor had gone, when everyone was dancing and laughing, Megan's in her jeans and her mother's sundress, spinning with her cousin's daughter on the makeshift dance floor. She looks free. She looks like herself again. She looks like Emma did when she was young and unafraid of the world. Sometimes I walk the property in the early morning, when the mist is rising off the creek and the mountains are pink with dawn, and I think about what could have been if I hadn't stood up, if Megan hadn't been brave enough to ask for help, if the community hadn't rallied around us. This place would be gone, bulldozed and parceled into lots for people who'd never know that for generations of my family had worked this land, that my children learned to ride horses in that pasture, that Emma and I renewed our vows under that oak tree on our 20th anniversary. Trepper was right about one thing: the land is worth millions developed, but he was wrong about everything else. Its real value can't be measured in dollars. It's measured in the eagle that nests in the same tree every spring, in the creek where Megan caught her first fish, in the hill where Emma and I used to watch sunsets, in the barn where Sam proposed to Megan while they were treating a colicky horse at 2 a.m. It's measured in the fact that when Megan has children, and she will, she says, When the time is right, they'll grow up on the same land their mother did, their grandmother did, their great-grandmother did. Know where they come from. They'll understand that some things matter more than money. As I finish writing this, I can see the wedding preparations beginning outside. Sam's family arrived yesterday. Good people, teachers and nurses, and one forest ranger, not a real estate developer among them. They brought homemade gifts and offered to help with setup. His mother pulled me aside last night and said, "Thank you for raising the woman who saved my son from being alone." I told her Sam saved Megan too, from believing she couldn't trust her own judgment. Tomorrow I'll walk my daughter down an aisle again. This time there will be no note, no plea for help, just joy, honest and earned. When the minister asks who gives this woman to be married, I'll say her mother and I do, because Emma's presence is still felt here in every sunrise, every wildflower, every tradition maintained. The ranch survives, the family endures, the community that revealed itself that day remains strong, and Trevor Hayes is just a name we rarely speak, a cautionary tale about what happens when you value the wrong things and underestimate the power of people who love each other. McGain just came in to read what I've written. She's crying, but smiling too. "You left out the best part," she says. "What's that?" "That you never doubted me, even when I was lying to you, even when I was too scared to tell the truth. You knew something was wrong and you were ready to act." The moment I ask, "That's not the best part," I tell her. "Then what is?" Asterisk, "The best part is that you asked." Tomorrow, she'll marry Sam in a simple ceremony that will cost a fraction of the first wedding, but mean infinitely more. The next day, they'll leave for a honeymoon, a camping trip to Yellowstone. Nothing fancy, and then they'll come home. To the ranch, to the life we've built and protected and cherished. Trevor wanted to destroy all of this for money, but in the end, his greed revealed our wealth not in dollars, but in connections, in courage, in the kind of love that stands up when it matters most. The ranch is still here. We're still here. And tomorrow, we celebrate not just a wedding, but a victory years in the making. A victory of values over value, of community over commerce, of love over manipulation. And this time when I give my daughter away, it will be with nothing but joy. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the Astral Vengeance, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.